What's going on, everybody? This is Just Crossed here. I'm back with another YouTube video, and today we will be doing something a little bit different than the today I learned, or this week I learned, or the one time it was like these past 5 months I've learned. So I have an exam on Friday. Specifically, I have an exam for proofing. So this is just going to be a little exam review time. Exam review, proofing, and cardinality edition. Edition. I had to think about how to spell that. Okay, so basically, I have an exam in 2 days. I haven't studied for it that much yet, and by that much, I haven't studied for it yet. And I thought a better way to start studying, because tomorrow I'm going to do like a big formula and a definition dump, and everything, and like go through more homework and stuff. But I thought today I could do some of basically the same thing and just write it down, and also make content so you guys know that I actually exist and don't just come back simultaneously or solely so I can leave again. So this chapter is all about cardinality, which is basically a fancy word for counting and how to count, and it is denoted as the cardinality or the I don't know, like a sharp hashtag, a sharp sign. The A, where A is a set. Finite or infinite. We'll get to the infinite stuff later. So we're just going to start from the very beginning. That noise is really annoying. So the idea is basically we're comparing sets, so like set A, set B, with respect solely to their size. We're comparing them, their magnitudes, or, translation, the number of elements in each of the set. So like for example, we're A1, A2, da 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 are elements of A, and then B1, B2, da 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 are elements of B, such that. So basically, we have our first definition, which is two sets, A and B, have the same cardinality, equal cardinalities. I'm going to try not to write everything just because that's going to take a long time. Have equal cardinalities and are called, I don't know if that's on the screen, called equipotent, denoted by a wiggly equal sign, B. If there exists a bijective function from A to B, bijective, and it's notated as cardinality of A is cardinality B, which is also denoted like that sometimes, which I find weird because that's also like, like literally everything else. And as I said, A is equipotent to B. Let me quickly check if you can see all that. Yeah, you can. Okay, cool. I did good. So that is the entire basis. That is what this entire set, or this entire chapter, I guess, is about, is equipotence and specifically the bijective functions or the bijective maps. I will go back and forth because my professor goes back and forth. So let's just continue along here. This is also different because most of the other time that I do, like today we learned, I don't have notes in front of me, and that's kind of the whole point. But I kind of need the notes because I don't know this stuff like the back of my hand, or I don't know it like how I know history. And so the immediately first thing we do is we have to talk about some properties of equipotence, specifically if we let A, B, and C sets, then we can say that A is equipotent to A. I would hope so. Then we can say that if A is equipotent to B, that implies that B is also equipotent to A. That basically is saying if there exists a bijective function from A to B, then that implies there exists a bijective function G from B to A. And that could also, you could imply hypothetically that it is the inverse function. And then obviously, or not obvious, well, depends on what you think. If A is equipotent to B, B is equipotent to C, that implies that A is equipotent to C by transitivity, whatever, doesn't matter, don't care anyway, don't need to know. Basically, you just need to know that. And so basically, we can say, here's another definition here. For A and B, A, B are the sets. We can define the cardinality of A is less than or equal to the cardinality of B if and only if, the double F here, there exists, I'm using the quantifiers there, I used it earlier, there exists, and then I will also be using, which is for all. There exists an F from A to B that is injective. So basically, when you have equality, there cardinalities, obviously, then that implies that there is a bijective. But when you have the weak, the weak, the less than or equal to, then at bare minimum, that implies that there exists an injective function from A to B. So it's a little weaker bit of a version, and basically what you have to do is you have to, like, we'll go over this in a definition a little in like a second, but that implies that there exists F injective, and then you have basically if B is less than or equal to A, then you have there exists an injective G from the other direction, and you can go from there and prove bijectivity. God, that noise is annoying. And then that wasn't even the last of it. So for A and B, oh, that's what. For A, B sets, we can say that, oh, that, oh, well, yeah, no, actually, that, it was the last of that, my bad. A, B, and C, we're going on to a lemma. We have the cardinality of A is less than or equal to the cardinality of B. If cardinality of A is equal to the cardinality of B. Because in particular, we have, and this is the weak less than or equal to, because particular the cardinality of A is less than or equal to the cardinality of A, specifically because of that equal sign. And then we also have kind of, again, obvious if you know your algebra rules, or oops, heck. Cardinality of B is less than or equal to the cardinality of C. That will imply that the cardinality of A is less than or equal to the cardinality of C. That's kind of clear. That's no duh, but proofing and all of that. So particularly I'm going to proof this one, or I'm going to write down the proof for this one. So the proof, because this is a proofing class, so I have to basically be able to prove stuff, which you kind of be obvious in a second when I get to the fact that we learned proof by induction. So basically, we have to show, we have A is less than or equal to B, which that implies that there's an injective F from A to B. And then we have cardinality B is less than or equal to the cardinality of C, which implies that there's an injective G between B to C. And now we need to find basically that there exists an injective H from A to C, which would be the sufficient grounds to show that. So instead, what we can just do is we can compose them. Basically, when you compose a function, so say we have f and we have our g, or here. So let me open a new one because this will take a little bit more space to explain what a composition is. And it's basically this. It's basic stuff, kind of. So we have our proof again, and we have a less than or equal to B implies there exists an F from A to B that is injective. And then we have B less than or equal to C implies that there exists an injective G from B to C. Okay, so side remark. Let me switch colors again. So compositions. Basically, you have two functions and you can show a composition. There's two compositions. You can have, if you have f and g are both functions, f of g and then g of f. And there are certain traits that if both functions exhibit, their composition will also exhibit. And in particular, you have our domain to the codomain. That is from B to C, domain to codomain. So in particular, this composition is the one we have to look at, because this one goes from the domain of A to the codomain of G. Whoops. And this is the other way around, domain of G. Whoops. Domain of F to the codomain of F. So we like that. We like that one a lot. So we're going to use composition G of F to where G of F goes from A to C. And the composition is injective due to F and G both being injective. Basically, we have shown that there does exist, and that it basically proves that there exists an H from A to C, where H is equal to G of F. And we have proven that there's an injective map, injective, which in fact does prove that the cardinality of A is less than or equal to the cardinality of C. Riveting stuff, I know. Like, holy shit. It's mind-blowing. And again, this is not to teach everybody cardinality, because I am not qualified, absolutely not qualified to do that at all in the slightest. But I just need to go over this, and I'm going over kind of stuff like that. So next, I mentioned earlier, cardinality can be taken of any set. And I think I explicitly said finite or infinite, and that is a spoiler alert, because you can take the cardinality of an infinite set, relatively. And so here's some definitions real quick. We have, this one's kind of a no-brainer. The cardinality of the empty set is in fact the empty set. And then we can define the cardinality of S as a number n, which is n is an element of the natural numbers, if and only if, that S is equipotent to the natural number, or n sub n. This is the natural number set, whoops, going from 1 to n. Basically all natural numbers until n, which is defined further in this set. X is in natural numbers, such that X is between 1 and n, which is again equal to that. So a set is called finite. S is finite if S equals, cardinality of S equals n, for some n in n naught, where n naught, I'll write this, n naught is just equal to the set n unioned with 0. So it's basically just the natural numbers plus 0. You could just also put positive integers, but like that's not a fight that I'm gonna care about particularly. And then another thing that's intuitively clear is that if the cardinality of S is equal to n and the cardinality of S is equal to m, and they're both and m are both in natural numbers, then that just implies that, n equals m, because no duh. Anyway, and so now we get to the kind of the fun, not the fun at all. Let me completely rephrase that. Not the fun part, but the part that is more involved with set theory, because this is a big set theory course. Instead of just talking finitely about counting the whole time, we can also talk about, unions and stuff. So we have this definition, which is basically if A and B are disjoint sets, where basically A union B is equal to A intersect B is equal to the empty set. There's no elements shared between A and B. And then if the cardinality of A equals M, cardinality of B equals N, then we can say the cardinality of A union B is equal to the cardinality of A plus the cardinality of B. Now, why do we have to specify specifically that they're disjoint? Is because that this case does not, it has to be disjoint because the formula does not account for shared elements. Let me explain what I mean, kind of. So like, say A is equal to 2, and then B is equal to 2, 3, 4. The cardinality of the union would be 1, 2, 3, 4, which would equal 4. But that does not equal cardinality of A plus cardinality of B, which is 2 plus 3. 4 doesn't equal 5. You're welcome. So basically, this is a formula. This is why you need the disjoint, is because it doesn't account for the elements that are shared within the set. And basically how you would prove this is because you have A equal to the cardinality of A equals M, that there does exist a bijective function from the natural number n sub n, or natural set of natural numbers n. God, let me write it out a little bit at least. Like, you basically n m going to A, and then you can also say the same thing about B with n m to B, and then you need to use them. You need to use these to construct a function that goes from n m plus n to A union B. I don't want to, though. That is a proof I will study tomorrow on my own. Let me get to the next page notes. I don't know how far I'll go. I don't know. I think I'll probably cut this off at like 30 minutes or so. We're at 18 right now. Wow. I don't know then. We'll see. No. So we're going to focus more on the finite sets for now using that. So there's the whole proof. I'm looking at, I didn't there, as in yes, here. The blank screen is the whole proof. I'm going to ignore that for now. So we can say generalized. So we have A union B is equal to the cardinality of A plus cardinality of B when A, B disjoint. We can officially say that let A1, A2, N all finite and pairwise disjoint basically means no union or no intersection of any set has an element. No elements are shared between any A1 to AN. Then we can say that would imply that the cardinality of the union of all of those from I equals 1 AI. Shoot, that's not the dude, sometimes I write the cap A like that, and sometimes I don't, is just equal to the summation from I equals 1 to n of the cardinality of AI. That makes sense. That is kind of simple here. So basically, it's a more generalized form of this formula, where like, excuse me, instead of like A union B union C union D union da 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 da, it's basically saying that the big union. That's what the big union sign means, is that it's the whole total union is equal to the sum of all of the individual cardinals, because this would just be equal to card A plus card B plus card C plus da da da. So that's literally just saying card A1 plus card A2 plus card A3 plus da 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 onwards. That's riveting stuff. That's actually kind of cool. Like, I think that's neat that you can write it in some form like that. So now, though, we shift a little bit. I think I'll end it after this. We shift to mathematical induction, baby. Induction. This, oops, that's a really bad line. I'm not gonna lie, this is like the most bullshit way to ever prove something, ever, honestly, genuinely. Excuse me, gotta take some sip of water. I've been talking for a while. Genuinely, this is the most hand-wavy, some bullshit way to prove something, because it basically just like, well, this kind of works. So induction is done in 3 steps. Step 1. Where's my pen? Whoops. I'm going to do step 1. The base case step. Basically, you can, well, okay, before we even get there, we can define what induction is. So the definition, we let n naught be a number in integers, and p is a property such that we have p of n naught is true, which basically is saying, or yeah, here is equivalent to n naught has property p, and we can then go, the following conditional statement is true. The following is true for all k in Z with k greater than or equal to n naught. That is important. This is important. So the conditional statement, Pn, if Pn is true for all n in Z, then we can say, or with n being between n naught and k, then that implies implicitly that property p of k plus 1 is also true. So what does that really mean? That basically says we have one case, or we start with one case. We have our property, and we start with one case. Our first case, the base case, is p of n naught. If this is true, then we can move on to the next case, which basically says the Pn case. If Pn is true, then we need to show that Pn plus, or for relatively, the Pn plus 1th term is equivalent to P of n plus 1. And it's basically this being the same would then have the same implication of pk plus 1 always being true. So that was a really hand-wavy way of explaining it, and I know because I am not a master of induction, I'm kind of okay at it. And we can say that in applications, induction often starts with n not being 0 or 1, doesn't matter. And that there's three steps, really, or three named steps. So we have the basis step, lovingly referred to as base case. We have our base case. Normally, usually, n not is equal to 0 or 1. Doesn't really matter. Basically, verifying p naught. Verifying p and not. My bad, works. Cool. We do that, then we move on to the induction step, which has a little step inside of it called form your induction hypothesis, the IH, as it's lovingly referred to. Basically, just show what you're trying to prove. The assumption that Pn is true for all n in Z, with n being in between n naught and k, is the hypothesis. So basically saying, like, if you have a property P, basically your hypothesis is stating that if pk works, then that'll imply pk plus 1. Relatively basic, in a basic way. And then your induction step is proving this by whatever way possible. The implications of that is being proved in your induction step. And we can do an example real quick because I need to, again, know how to prove things. So that's cool. So we're going to do an example and then we'll call it a video, basically. Okay, so we have for an n in natural numbers, let p of n equal, or b, let p of n be that p of n is equal to 1 plus 2 plus plus n is equal to n plus 1 over 2. Okay, that's basically just, this is the sum. Oops, that's an off. I'm just going to, let me just rewrite all of this to make it a little bit better. 1 plus 2 plus plus n, which is equal to the sum from I equals 1 to n of n, or whoops, I. Let that be equal to n times n plus 1 over 2. That is our property. So what are we going to do? How are we going to prove this is true for everything? Let me have our base case first. Because the sum starts at 1. So n naught is equal to 1. And we can see that p of 1 would be equal to the sum from I equals 1 to 1 of 1. Or, yeah, of I, which is equal to 1 plus 1 over 2, which equals 1. Riveting stuff. That's true. We're on to the next step. We're going to make our induction hypothesis now. Our induction hypothesis is that saying for pk, already knowing what k is, we can say, because basically we just replace n with k at that point. I equals 1 to k of I is equivalent, or is equal to, k times k plus 1 over 2 for all k in n. Basically, that's our hypothesis. So how are we going to prove it? Now this is where the induction step comes in. The induction step itself. So let's show p of k. One more time. So p of k is, let's just is equal to k plus 1 over 2. All right. Now we can, again, we're going to actually rewrite it as the sum. So k, I equals 1 of I. And then what we're going to do, real sneaky stuff, is add k plus 1. Now what would that do? That's going to get us to the k plus 1th term in the power series, or the series specifically. So that would actually get us to k plus 1 I to the 1 of I. All right. So then, I'm kind of like reading it, making sure I'm doing this right. That and then would imply we have k plus 1, I equals 1 of I, which is equal to k squared plus 3k plus 2 over 2, which is precisely that quantity, this thing, is precisely equal to property k of k plus 1. Because if we plug it in, this is completely with just pk. This, and then you add another term. You add a term. So then we can just show that the actual pk plus 1 is equal to the sum k plus 1, I is equal to 1 of I, which would be basically k plus 1 times k plus 1 plus 1 over 2, which is k plus 1 times k plus 2 over 2, k squared plus 3k plus 2, which leads to that answer. So, let me see if I'm still on the screen. Just gotta make sure. Yeah, I actually am. Riveting. Okay, so basically showing that that's equivalent, showing that these two things are equal is exactly what you need to do for induction. Basically showing that the property holds no matter what value you're at. By the principle of mathematical induction, we have now shown that Pn is true for all n in n, because we've shown that these two things are linked and therefore consistent for every n in k, or for every k in n. So proof over. We're done here. Basically showing that p of k plus k plus 1 is equivalent to p of k plus 1 is enough. Most of the time, don't take my word on it. Most of the time we're done. And let me check how much time I got left. We're actually right at 32 minutes, so we're actually gonna call it here. This has been a little bit of a review session. Please, if you watch, make sure that I don't fail, or pray for me that I don't fail. I got this math exam in 2 days. I'm gonna do more studying tomorrow. That will not be recorded because I don't want to distract myself, and I also want to save time. This is time consuming. But it's been real. I'm Justin. I'm Just Crust. And we're done here.